think we found another. Get ready.
In the summer of 2023, I was unemployed and bored out of my mind. Maybe it was curiosity, or I really was just that bored. But I ended up reading a whole bunch of those romance, fantasy, aka rom fan, aka romantasy comics you find on sites like Webtoons and Tapas. You know the ones like, I'm the male lead's accountant, or the villainess becomes the cool person who everyone loves unconditionally. Those kind of wish fulfillment stories targeted towards female audiences. And some I really liked a lot. I thought they were pretty cute. Others weren't really my speed, but it was during this time reading these comics that I had a lightning strike of an idea hit me. What if I, just for kicks and giggles, made my own Webtoon comic for one of these stories? I mean, it can't be that hard. So I began just working on a comic. I made some characters. I had a basic story planned out. I even made some pages. The story was called Golden Hair, and it was going to be so cool. So how far into this comic did I go? How many pages did I make? 2 pages. Strips? Whatever you call them. It wasn't a lot. Just literally 2 pages of backstory that so many of these romantasy comics start off with. Characters aren't even named. We just have this female lead who remembered her past life of being vaguely aware of these romantasy stories from a sister that told her all this information secondhand in her past life. And now that she's in this fantasy world and just suddenly remembered this past life of hers, it's ruined her wedding to the prince that's coming up or just about to happen. That was apparently prophesized by this wizard guy, with this last prophecy he had before he died being about how the prince would marry a woman with golden hair, and that would lead to an era of prosperity for the kingdom. We don't know anything about the prince. Why does he have horns? I mean, I know why he has horns, because I remember the process of making him, but that's not explained in the comic. I mean, it's only 2 pages, because I didn't even finish it. And what really hurts is that the comic wasn't even going to be that long. If I had done at least 1 or 2 more pages, I could have completed the story I had envisioned. But even with how short it was, I didn't plan properly, and I just didn't have a lot of faith in myself. So I did those 2 pages and just never picked it up again. Hashtag ADHD. But even after all this time, Golden Hair as a project never really left me, and it's been one of those things that I've had in the back of my brain for a while. And like a lot of things, I just constant rotation of ideas, Golden Hair being one of them. So I thought it'd be really interesting for me to revisit this project, update it some, and kind of explain to you all the plans that I had for it. So let's get into it. Like I stated previously, Golden Hair was intended to be a very short comic, all of it taking place at the wedding of the character I am currently drawing, Cressida Schlesinger, and the Prince Vadik Ivanov. And it was an arranged marriage because of the dead wizard prophecy I mentioned earlier. And things were going pretty good for Cressida. She's a daughter of a count marrying the prince, and she was really excited. Except, of course, right before the wedding, she gets a sudden rush of memories of her past life when she was in quote-unquote our world. And although she's never read these romantasy stories, she has all this secondhand information from her sister who read them and told Cressida's past life all about it. So Cressida kind of gets the gist of these stories, and she doesn't really want to be a part of it. And getting married to Vatic now is just like really scary because it's a huge commitment too, right? Because not only it's like, oh, big royal wedding, there's this plot point that the marriage is bound together in matrimony with these like magic necklaces that would make their fates intertwined or something. I don't know, that's like all I had. All Cressida's character was like conflicted and unsure, and Vatic, I don't think he really had a personality, if I remember. So what are the plans for the new version? Well, I think the biggest change off the bat would be how Isekai elements would play into Cressida's character in a lot of these, romantasy comics that specifically have like these Isekai elements or openings. There's a few different ways that it plays out. The character from, quote unquote, our world will, get potentially plopped just straight up into the fantasy world, or they die and reincarnate as a baby in the fantasy world, or they die and reincarnate and basically their soul possesses a person in the fantasy world, basically becoming them. And I always thought this concept was a little freaky, a little scary if you think about it. Like, imagine you die and some random Joe Smo ghost takes over your body and starts being you. That's a little scary. I think, at least to me, it's a little weird. So I had this thought that what if one point in her teens or something, Cressida had a near-death experience herself. She nearly dies. And during this incident, one of these like reincarnator ghosts attaches to her body. The ghost, having supposed to like take over her body basically, like how it goes in these stories. But since Cressida, she lived, she didn't die, this ghost is just attached to her like a poltergeist. Almost like Venom, but instead of a morally dubious partner in crime, this reincarnator ghost is just a straight up bully to her. This ghost has read numerous of these fantasy novels, and she knows how they're supposed to go. So now, to her, this whole entire situation, it's like, oh, okay, I'm in an isekai fiction thing, but instead of a first-person experience, it's a third-person experience. So she really just views Cressida as this doll or puppet she has to control to get the best ending. And Cressida, who in this updated version now is a daughter of a baron instead of a count, she's this shy, sweet bookworm. She's very passive, very head in the clouds. And this ghost, she wants a protagonist who's more like girl boss, stare people down, slapping people, very assertive. She doesn't like Cressida, so a lot of their dynamic is this ghost who only Cressida can see, basically bullying, Cressida into being some type of boss babe, and Cressida just being miserable and absolutely hating it. And part of the reason why Cressida doesn't really fight back all that much is this ghost has probably also not only threatened Cressida, but also threatened Cressida's family and friends, oh, if you don't cut yourself off from this person, I'm gonna kill them or something. It's really messed up stuff, which I understand, but that's what I'm going for. That's the point. I don't think, even though Cressida's a total doormat, I do think she still has some lines she won't cross, such as, slapping a maid to assert dominance for whatever reason. I see that sometimes in these novels. The royal lady will just slap the maid. Cressida doesn't do that. She's still not very assertive, so what the ghost kind of makes her do, she has to end up doing to appease this ghost, is to be a much more behind the scenes, pulling at strings, manipulating things to come out her way. I think the biggest example of this would actually be how she and Vatic get engaged in this version. So I'm keeping the dead wizard prophecy with the whole entire, if Vatic marries a woman with golden hair, there's going to be apparently an era of prosperity for the kingdom. So instead of, I think in the original version, Cressida was just kind of like chosen for this role for whatever reason. Instead, it's like basically The Bachelor with all the eligible bachelorettes that like fit this description, come from a noble background, and Cressida and this ghost end up winning what is basically this season of The Bachelor because of the ghost's interference and Cressida cheating kind of stuff behind the scenes. Of course, Cressida really is not that excited to marry the prince. I guess as they say, the saying goes, her heart belongs to another. But I don't really want to go too much into that right now. I just know that Cressida is this sad, sad woman keeping on appearances to hide the fact that she's being bullied by this ghost. And here we have the Bachelor himself, Vatic Ivanov, our male lead, and he's very much the polar opposite to the, like real Cressida, the Cressida that doesn't have to force herself to act a certain way to please the poltergeist that has attached herself to her. So whereas genuine Cressida, she's a dreamer, a romantic, an idealist, very passive, Vatic is very straightforward. He doesn't like beating around the bush. He likes being productive and organized. When the whole marriage prophecy, first was announced, Vatic didn't even bat an eye at. His response was like, okay, yeah, I'll marry some random woman if that ensures the prosperity of my country down the line. That makes the most logical sense. For Vatic, greater goods outweigh personal wants. So it's a massive contrast to Cressida and her actual feelings, where she wants to marry for love. Vatic, as a person, he's definitely the type to spread himself thin by taking a lot more responsibilities than he's able to handle. And when it gets too much for him, he absolutely hates asking for help. He's very stubborn in that regard because he views it as a sign of weakness. A prince and a future king should be resilient and should be able to handle anything that comes his way. So at times where, things don't go as planned, whether it's his own shortcomings or outside forces he has no control over, he's very hard on himself because he holds himself up to these high standards. And that can be good in some regards because he's always pushing himself to be better and better and dedicated in his work. It's because he has such high standards for himself, he subconsciously has these same high standards for other people, so it can also make him come across as a bit judgmental at times. All these qualities make him sound quite the miserable stick in the mud, and he certainly is, but I think he definitely has, good qualities about him. Like I said, he's a very hard worker, he's honest, he's reliable, and sure, he's not the funniest or the most charming, but, he's there for his people. I actually hate to admit this a lot, actually, but he's kind of like Dwight from The Office, just a little bit. Just a smidge. Vatic's design is interesting because out of the characters I'm drawing today, his design has definitely changed the most. His hair went from having like a part to having bangs, and I decided to make his skin tone just a bit darker. Both of these changes happening because I felt like it, which probably isn't the best thought behind character design, but sometimes you just gotta go for things. Try it out. The wedding day outfit he is wearing is mainly just an amalgamation of all those military-esque formal wear you see in a lot of romantasy comics. I totally forgot to mention this earlier, but Cressida's wedding dress was also based off like historical bride gowns I saw from like the 1800s, though I'm not exactly sure how historically accurate her gown was. And Vatic's outfit is definitely very like fantasy as opposed to historically accurate. But since when have these like romance fantasy comics been super concerned about historical accuracy. Speaking of that, so why does Vatic have horns? Well, he's like a demon guy. Well, why is Vatic a demon guy? So one thing I didn't mention about the creation of Golden Hair is that it is also partially based off a dream I had around the same time I was reading all these romantasy comics. I don't really remember much of it except it was about some demon prince guy with long silver white hair, and that kind of visual stuck with me, so I just really wanted to have like the male lead in this, you know, kind of webtoon comic parody be a demon prince with long silver white hair. And so how I have it set up for like the lore of this story is that these demon people, you know, it's just like any other, you know, like fantasy race. And the country that Vatic is a prince of has a larger population of these demon people. I don't have a name for the country yet, so in my mind I've just been calling it the Demon Country, which isn't really good. I need to get around to naming it, but for now it's the Demon Country. And in the original version I had of this story, when I was first coming up with it, Vatic was going to be like half demon, and one of his parents was going to be human. And there was going to be this joke that he was like going to be super angsty, but his parents were like really loving and supportive of him. And I'm going to keep the idea of him being angsty with supportive parents because I just think that's really funny. But have his parents both be demons, and demons as like, you know, a fantasy race or whatever. I mean, they're basically people for the most part. You know, they're gonna have the pointy ears and the horns, with these more unusual traits being rarer and rarer the kind of more out there they are. So most demon people, you know, they're gonna have like regular human skin tones, regular human hair colors, just pointy ears and horns. But more out there traits like Vatic's hair color, eye color, that's a bit more uncommon, a bit more like recessive. Even more unusual things like unusual skin color, like a green or a purple, that's rarer. And some, you know, demons straight up look like the monstrous demons you see in medieval art, but that's like extremely rare. That's very uncommon. A couple final things. Wow, that's kind of an oxymoron. I want to mention is kind of the magic of this world, because it's based off a generic romance fantasy webtoon. It's going to have kind of the generic fantasy base elemental magic, you know, water, earth, fire, wind, probably a light and a dark. Another thing is that the magic wedding necklaces, I'm having them be magic wedding rings. When I was first coming up with this story, I thought it made more sense for certain plot reasons for the rings to be necklaces, but upon revisiting this idea, I've realized, oh, it still makes perfect sense for them to be rings. So I'm making them rings. How like this magic activates, you know, like connecting these two people. How I imagine it works is that, you know, at the wedding, you know, you have to put on the rings, and it kind of partially activates once the ring is put on the ring finger on the specific person and they say I do, and then it's like fully like sealed, set up when the person officiating the wedding says, I now pronounce you, you know, man and wife, or very basic. I apologize, I'm still working on it. And if, you know, Cressida and Vatic do end up getting married, they're gonna have a doomed relationship they're really gonna have to work on for all time. Because, I mean, they don't hate each other, but they don't really like each other. I mean, they're just very neutral about each other's existence. Honestly, Cressida probably holds a little bit of resentment, not necessarily at Vatic, just the whole situation, because she's being forced into it, and she's having to pretend like she's happy for this when she's really not. So I imagine at the wedding, it would be the very bland and kind of a downer. You know what, I actually, let's take a quick peek at the wedding and see how it turns out.
and Vadik Nikolai Ivanov III, son of Vadik Nikolai Ivanov II, you acknowledge by donning this magic ring of union, you are vowing your life to Cressida Elise Schlesinger, daughter of Hans Erik Schlesinger, forever in both health and unhealth, and wealth and unwealth, now and forever until you die.
I do.
Now, Cressida Elise Schlesinger, daughter of Hans Erik Schlesinger, do you take blah 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 blah, insane urge blah 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 blah. Oh God! Someone's gonna crash through the window! Everybody get down!
Now, do I have regrets on how that all played out? I do.
And now pronounce you husband and wife. Bleh.
I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. That's right. You saw that correctly. A cartoon rabbit literally crashes the wedding, and through cartoon hijinks, ends up accidentally marrying Vadik. Golden hair, more like golden hair. And I mean that because she's not a rabbit, she's a hare. Her name's Harriet O'Hare. You get it? Yes, that was always the plan for this story. Always what I had in mind. That's why it was going to be so short, because it was going to end at this point. Literally, that's where it was going to end. It was just a gag, a joke. Because I just thought it'd be really funny. Like, one of these romantic-y, like, wedding things, just to have Bugs Bunny or some similar cartoon character just randomly show up and crash it. Is it stupid? Yes, but I just couldn't help myself. It's just one of those things that I just come up with. That's probably not the most original, but man, it just makes me laugh. And you can see kind of why I'm so mad with myself that I never finished the comic in its original version, because like, really only needed one more page, and I would have sold the joke, but I never landed. Unlike Harriet, who did land and crashed terribly. So even though the comic would have ended right then and there, this is how I kind of would imagine it going after this point. There would be more stunned silence. Harriet is like, oh, sorry there, let me just take off this ring. get out of quite the wedding, huh? And she tries to take off the ring and it's not coming off. It's like not budging. She's like trying really hard to get this ring off. And so then it's like, oh, it's probably just the glove on my hand making the ring suck. So let me just, take off my glove. And she takes off the glove, and the ring, it's a magic ring. It's not coming off her hand. The glove comes off, but not the ring. And at this point, Harriet is just like, what the, oopsie. So Vadik is like, guards, seize her. So then you have a classic cartoon gag chase, which is just absolutely baffling everyone, watching this, guards included. She runs off a ledge and she's like suspends herself in air for a bit before she accidentally looks down and then falls, pulling objects out of her pockets that she should not be able to, that are, just too big to reasonably fit in her pocket. And she's finally caught when she fails at doing one of those like false door tunnel paintings you see in stuff like in Roadrunner. This is because Harriet is not an actor. In the, place where Harriet is from, it's a lot like kind of 1940s, 1950s cartoons. Bad stuff not included, by the way. Maybe mix in a little bit of like the Disney comics for like Scrooge McDuck, and just a little bit. This sounds a little crazy, but just a little bit of like Dreamcast Sonic games. City Escape. Just a little bit of City Escape in there as well. So it's, kind of more modern, capitalistic society. And Harriet, her job, she's an aircraft mechanic, and she's somewhat of a good pilot, as evidence that she literally crashed her plane. So in this kind of cartoon place, the typical like cartoon gags, that is acting, those breaks in logic. You have to train and get better at. So the common, like, Toon doesn't really know how to do stuff like that, or if they do, it's like really basic stuff. And Harriet only knows what she does know because she has a sibling who's in showbiz and would show her how to do some of these gags, and she would help, the sibling like practice for like auditions and stuff. So even though she does know some of these like gags, she's not very good at it. Like her hammer space has a limit to it. Let's say it's just like a toolbox and some other like miscellaneous smaller items. But a real professional actor from the cartoon Annie, what did I call it? Annie Lantia? They can pull up a straight up like Toon-tanic from their hammer space. So, Harriet is caught by the guard. Interrogation begins. There's probably a lot more shenanigans, tomfoolery going on. And Harriet is just like, hey, this is not my intent. I was totally just going out for a simple flight test when a sudden storm appeared and sucked me through this portal. How did I get here? I don't know. Please don't kill me. So it's decided that from here, the plan is that, the guard, they're going to have to kind of go secretly recover her plane parts and bring it back to the castle so she can fix it. And the Magic Council is going to have to work at slowly unmagicking the magic ring bond, so that way they can redo the wedding for Vatic and Cressida, so they can get married for reals. And until then, they have to keep this whole situation as low-key as possible because it is so strange and so out there. They don't want to freak out the public, especially with some of the stuff Harriet is pulling, Harriet's able to do or claiming that she has knowledge of. It could really topple society. So it's like we have to Area 51 this shit. Go, go, go. No, not that extreme, but you get the gist. Though with someone as spirited as Harriet O'Hare, that might be a little harder than it seems. So design-wise, Harriet is very clearly based off of, not only Bugs Bunny and Roger Rabbit, but also Rosie the Riveter. She's independent, outgoing, very sociable, but she's also much more individualistic, and that definitely causes her to clash with Vatic on things. I think their dynamic is very much that song, anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. But I think as time goes on, they realize they have some common ground. Both Harriet and Vatic, they like perfection or like improving themselves. They're both very stubborn and independent. Harriet has a much warmer personality compared to Vatic. I mean, she's nice to everyone because with her life experiences, she knows it's better to keep people on their good side. But when it comes down to it, she's also very much do it by herself type of person because she just fears relying on others and also kind of fears deep attachments to people. So I think, Vatic and Harriet can kind of show each other like, hey, it's okay to open up. It's okay to be vulnerable and ask others for help. They, as time goes on, whatever bickering they do is becomes more jokesting. Any bickering becomes much more. Any bickering they have becomes playful teasing on each other's ends. Harriet has this roguish charm about her that I think would interact in a very interesting way with, not only Vatic, but Cressida, because they're both kind of wet blankets. If Golden Hair was a TV show or a webcomic or something, or some format that had seasons, this first season would be Harriet learning to fit in this new world while gathering parts of her plane. I could see one episode being about some inventor coming to the court and showing off this automaton chess player, and everyone just being blown away by this machine's ability to beat everyone in chess. And Harriet is just convinced that there's something suspicious about this machine, but she can't quite explain to everyone properly why she has these feelings and why this machine doesn't add up. Cressida and Harriet, on the other hand, would probably start off a little awkward. I think Harriet would be really upfront and tell Cressida that she's really sorry for ruining her wedding, and is surprised when Cressida is pretty chill about it. I could see them having like tea time together, like having cucumber sandwiches, gossiping about stuff. You know, Harriet trying to get Cressida to be more like open and honest about her feelings. And, you know, Cressida's actually starting to kind of enjoy hanging out with Harriet. But the ghost, the reincarnation ghost, just absolutely despising Harriet, wanting Harriet dead, and constantly trying to get Cressida to like kill her or just injure her in some way, with this whole entire plot point of, you know, someone's trying to kill Harriet, but we don't know who, and there'd be this fake out that, oh, maybe it's the vice captain of the guard, but no, it was Cressida and the reincarnation ghost. And the season 1 finale would be, you know, the rest of the characters trying to fight off Cressida, who at this point has been like totally possessed by like the reincarnation ghost. And, you know, she's doing all this like dark energy magic, and it's all like really scary and intense. And, you know, when they finally are able to expel this ghost for good at the end of this, you know, finale, it sets up like, okay, what was the deal with that ghost? Where is Harriet from? All these mysteries. We'll have to find out what happens later on. With Cressida getting a, you know, kind of redemption arc for what she's done. Just maybe Vatic and Harriet getting closer. I don't know. I have a lot of ideas for the story, and a lot of them are pretty out there, and this video is already long enough, so I'm just gonna keep it to myself for now. I still hope you enjoyed my ramblings. This video was definitely a bit more unscripted than what I usually do. But yeah, that's Golden Hair, my really silly idea that I came up with on a whim over 1.5 years ago. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's super cursed, or maybe there was something interesting with this idea? What adventures or scenarios would you want these characters to go through? I would love to read your comments. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, this is Gatsby from Gatskin, signing out.